I wrote about this on my newsletter on Sunday, but I want to just talk about how crazy this is because it's actually gotten even better than when I wrote about it on my most recent Sunday newsletter. I basically inserted pictures of myself into Google image search. And 5 months ago, I recorded podcast episodes about how I was going to do this, but I didn't actually know if it was going to work. It was like a theory that I had that I could create a page on edwardsturm.com called Photos, name it Photos of Edward Sturm, put in a bunch of photos of me. Each one, the file names are optimized. So the file names are like Edward Sturm meeting the editor-in-chief of Forbes, or Edward Sturm meeting Michael Bloomberg, Edward Sturm in Romania, Edward Sturm in Italy. And so I wrote these file names. I added the dates, and then I wrote very descriptive alt text. All the alt text began with Edward Sturm. I also put in captions. I made the page actually look nice. I had fun designing it. It was really like a fun project. I think it took me around a week. And I made all these podcast episodes about it. But I didn't think it had actually worked. And the reason for that is because it took time for the images to propagate on Google Images. It took time for these images of me to propagate on Google Images. And they weren't at the top of Google Images. So most of them, they were below the fold in order to see them. You actually had to start scrolling to see them. So for that reason, I didn't think it had worked. And then last week, I realized that I could actually, I didn't have to count how many images were showing just normally loading Google Images. I thought I would have to count it. And I realized that I could just copy everything, put it into Excel. There would be spaces between each image. I could count how many spaces there are and use that to find out how many images load automatically with a random Google image search. And I found that the number is 140. And then I searched the page for the page title of this photos page that I made. And I found out, and this was last week, and I'm like, this is crazy. And I saw that 22 of the 140 images when you search Edward Sturm are from this photos page. And it gets even crazier because now, just a few days later, it's 27. So these images are taking time to propagate. That's number one. Number two is I actually think it would be even more, but I have like some legit competition. There's another Edward Sturm who makes viral videos. I hate this guy. He makes viral videos and his pictures are showing for my pictures too. I hate that guy. And then there's yet another Edward Sturm who's like a theater graduate and he's developing a social media presence. And so his images are also showing. I have so much competition, but I am the SEO. So I'm getting my photos in there and this photos page has been working. What's cool about this is I'm able to choose what photos I want. I make this photos page with my favorite photos of myself, photos that tell a story, photos that make me look interesting. And so when people Google Edward Sturm, they find these photos of me and then they go down the Edward Sturm rabbit hole and they learn about me. And that for me, that's good because I think I've lived a decent life and people can look into that and then use that to become bigger fans of me. And I think, or anybody can just do this. If you want to put images of your brand and you want to choose what images show up, you can do this too. And I think that's so cool that you can do this. Here's how I did it. I'm going to give exactly how I did it, because anybody can do it. So I created this photos page. It's edwardsturm.com/photos. I put the URL to it, the link to it in my footer because you want to link to it from your homepage. You want to have it linked to in a way that's very easily accessible because that passes more link juice to it. It says to Google, this is a priority page. So I put it in my footer. The page title was Edward Sturm Photos and then a dividing line, edwardsturm.com. So you would just replace Edward Sturm with your name or the name of your brand, the name of your product, whatever it is. It could be a product, it could be a brand, whatever it is. The meta description is photos of Edward Sturm from the 90s and onwards, photos of Edward all over the world in various activities. And again, just replace Edward Sturm with your brand name. H1, the top heading is photos of Edward Sturm. The H2s are dates because I divide all the photos by the date that they were taken. And then I start the photos, I think, in 2011. Here's an example of my file names, my alt text, and my captions. So I'll have a file name that's photos _ Edward-Sturm _, and then all of this is with dashes with Steve Forbes at the 2024 Forbes Iconoclast Summit .jpg. So that's an example of a file name. And the alt text for that would be Edward Stern shaking hands with Forbes media chairman and editor-in-chief Steve Forbes, photo at the Forbes Iconoclast Summit in 2024. And then I actually shorten it for the captions, and I make Edward Stern with Forbes media chairman and editor-in-chief Steve Forbes, photo taken in 2024. So you have the file name, which is a bit shorter, and all the file names use the same format. You have your alt text, which is longer and descriptive, and then you have the caption, which is a bit shorter. And I think the caption is necessary too. Oh, the crazy thing, I didn't even do any link building for this page. I didn't build any links for this. I made the page, I put it in my footer, and the images naturally started propagating on Google Images. And it's so cool because I talked about this on a bunch of different podcasts 5 months ago when I had this idea. And I think it's so cool that it worked. So now 27 out of the 140 images on Google Images without having to click more results. So if you scroll down, what happens if you open Google Images and then you scroll down, it'll naturally load another page. And so there's 140 images there. And then if you want to see more images, you have to click more results. So there's 140 images before clicking more results. 27 of those are from this page. That's dope. Here's what else is kind of cool. So I wrote up this newsletter and I'm like, this is teaching people how to get onto Google Images. Let me see if there's a keyword around this. So I wrote the newsletter and I have all of my newsletters come out on edwardsturm.com/articles. The newsletters goes out to my mailing list. And then I take what I wrote and I adapt it for my articles page. Adapting it is very easy. I just have like pre-written tags that I use and a pre-made template for my articles section. If I say like, in this email, I'm going to show you, I'll just replace the word email with article. And that's kind of what I do. So it's really easy to repurpose the emails for my articles section, edwardsturm.com/articles. But this is what's kind of cool. When I publish some of these, I'm like, okay, let me see if there's a keyword that I can use for this article, for this post. And I see that how to get on Google Images is something that's searched by several hundred people a month. Nobody's really targeting it. And I'm like, perfect. So I call this post how to get on Google Images, and literally within a few days of publishing the post, it's ranking on the first page of Google for how to get on Google Images. So if you Google how to get on Google Images, this post, which was previously my newsletter, I just repurposed my newsletter into this post on my website, is ranking on the first page of Google for how to get on Google Images. And I am successfully on Google Images with a lot of different tricks. So I think this is so cool. Other ways to get on Google Images, put your brand into different directories using different photos, or use podcasts. I've talked about AIPodcastmatcher.com uses AI to match guests who want to get on shows with hosts who want guests. And podcast thumbnails on YouTube rank pretty well, especially from a variety of different channels. And the thumbnails usually have your brand in the thumbnail. And because your title is in the name of the episode, Google Images knows to pull it and put it into images. So for me, my feed, Edward Stern on Google Images, is images taken from this photos page, images taken from YouTube thumbnails, images taken from social media, and images taken from different business directories that I apply to. But I think this is so cool. Anybody can do this. The photos page worked. You can check it out at edwardsturm.com/photos. And that's what I wanted to share on this episode of the show. I am hyped by this. And now I'm ranking for a new keyword, which literally was just me reusing my Sunday newsletter and seeing if there was any keyword that I could use for the title when it came out onto my website. Because for my newsletters, I use one-word subject lines because those tend to perform better. And then when I put the newsletter onto my website, I have more of a longer title that would work for SEO. And so that's what I did here. And it worked. So it's dope. That's what I wanted to share with you. If you want more SEO hacks, compactkeywords.com. Just released it after working on it for the last 11 months. I share some crazy stuff in it. And that is all for episode 562 of my daily digital marketing podcast. 562 episodes in a row. I actually, 2 days ago, maybe you didn't listen, I recorded an episode with Jason Levin from X. Jason Levin is a brilliant growth hacker, and he shared some crazy stuff too. That's an hour long. After the first 11 minutes, I got him to open up about crazy different hacks that he's doing. I couldn't believe that he was sharing some of the stuff with me. So that's a pretty good episode. And that was episode 560 of the show. It's Viral Growth Hacks from Jason Levin. All right, that's all for episode 562 of this podcast. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched on YouTube, thank you so much for listening. If you listened on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, anybody can do amazing digital marketing. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.